Hello guys, a very good afternoon to all of you who have taken CAT 2023 slot 2. I know what you have been through. Many of our mentors have also been through similar stuff in the last couple of hours when they were going through the DILR and quant of this paper. I am waiting for Nikunj sir and Siddharth sir to join me. In the meantime, I'll just take you through what initially the paper looked like. CAT the paper structure was similar to what it was last year, barring that one change in VA. However, the type of questions, the type of topics that questions came out of were slightly different as compared to last year, especially when it came to QA. The overall picture said that okay, VARC may reading the passages was not very difficult, but answering a few questions may have been difficult. The passages were more or less manageable in terms of reading, and in VA also there was one question of each type that was probably doable. Uh, I'm just waiting for Nikunj sir to join. Nikunj sir is here. So Nikunj, over to you. What is your first impression of the paper?
Thanks, Ravi. Overall, looked a little difficult compared to CAT 22. Um, Two sections were slightly more difficult than last year. English, though, I think was the easiest, and the best part was the first section was the easiest. So I think that way students would have maximized the English section and outscored what they would normally have been doing in the mocks, because passages were reasonably readable. None of them were very difficult to read. VA was surprisingly quite simple, because even parajumbles, the usual parajumbles, which normally we don't get points, even one of those two was doable here. So I think English was the icing on the cake. Being the first section here, that was the key. The students who would have actually scored or done well in English overall would have got a very good score. LRDI, as expected, even if you look at last 3 to 4 years of LRDI, we've always had it the most challenging section. The absence of DI, I think, made it much less scoring. So last year, I think 2 slots had one DI question, which actually made up the scores went up a bit due to that part. Here, I think because of absence of any sitter kind of a case, no graphs, no data-driven questions, more or less questions were hovering around fitting values. So 2 of the cases, like the fundraising question and the sack coin question, were all in terms of fitting numbers, single digit numbers, but trying to just fit into a scheme of medians, averages, and summations. Overall, in LRDI, I think out of 4, anybody who got 1 completely correct can done well. 2, you have absolutely killed the paper. And I doubt anybody would have gone beyond 2 in this particular section. So anything 7 to 8 questions plus in LRDI would be a reasonable attempt. QA, yes, this was one surprise element this time. The surprising element was there was no easy question. So I think there, even in arithmetic, whatever questions we got, something as simple as profit and loss, something as simple as compound interest, had reasonable length of calculation. So you had to calculate 3 years, half yearly compounding for CI. Even profit and loss questions were not direct. So I think absence of easy arithmetic questions would take the cutoffs down in QA. Too much of algebra, not much of geometry, unfortunately. So I think overall, if last year we were saying QA was around moderate level, this year I would term it as moderate to difficult. The key, again, I come back, is English here. People who have done well in English overall would have felt the paper to be reasonably manageable. In terms of scores, I think we've put it down here in terms of doable questions.
We'll get to that, Nikunj, in some time, in terms of the scores. Siddharth is also here. Nikunj, Siddharth and I were discussing when I came out of slot 1, when I came out of slot 1, what I felt was this was not a paper of quants, which was for someone who is doing self preparation, or
doing self-preparation or
someone who has not gone through the formulae or the concepts. It was not, this was not a paper in which you could derive something at on time using your logic and get through it. Did you feel the same?
Yeah, very concept driven, and थोड़ा जुगाड़ इसमें कम लगेगा. Couple of questions, yes, but otherwise it's slightly more biased towards concept heavy students. So whether you call it engineers or might be even non-engineers who are very conceptually good in maths would not have found the paper to be as difficult. But those average students, they would not have found too many
not have
scoring
found.
options in QA in this paper.
So that brings us to the VARC section. Siddharth is here. Siddharth, I would want you to take you. I would want you to take us through the VARC section passage by passage. What's your input? What are your insights about the first passage that is there on the screen? Garments and fashion
All right.
industry, pollution, environment.
So yeah. So the first passage on garments, fashion industry, and pollution, I think it was an easy read passage. The questions were also doable. The good thing about all the reading comprehension, I mean the four passages, I feel if I compare it to last year, there were not many questions which were tricky in nature. So last year we had to read a lot, three negations, four negations, something of that sort. Those number of questions of those type were less. Second passage, when we are talking about Netflix, it was also easy to moderate read. I think if you have understood the passage, then all the four questions were doable. There were few questions on weakening the argument of the author, or whatever the has been mentioned in the passage. You had to weaken those things. So I think each passage has one such question, if I'm not wrong. At least three questions were definitely there. The third passage on liberalism, uh, if somebody is familiar with the political terms, or the countries that were being discussed in these passages, they would have found the passage easy. Not very difficult to do, but if you compare out of the four, this was perhaps the more difficult. And the last one on history. So what the passage was about, the comparison of history with respect to what people generally believe, common sense in history, and then author gave his opinion related it to science. I think this was. I will go with moderate read, not easy read with this passage. It was definitely moderate, not easy. First one was easy. Second one, Netflix, was easy to moderate. The remaining two were moderate to difficult, according to me. Number of doable questions, there were 16 questions. I think if anybody would have attempted all the four passages, and attempting four passages would have taken around 28 minutes time, because questions were not very difficult to understand. Last year, it took a lot of time to understand the question. I think 10 questions definitely one should get right. So what we are saying is 4 plus 3, 7, and 2, 2. Yeah. So that's around 10 to 11 doable questions.
All right. So overall, RCs you felt was easier as compared to CAT 2022. Overall, if you look at the all 16 questions, चारों passage मिला के देखने से.
So, reading wise, I think thoda sa easy. Question wise, definitely easy.
All right.
So what I felt
So
was that
last
in
year,
every passage you could easily get two questions correct. So you see the
Yeah.
kind of accuracy which students suffer normally in RC, मुझे लगा कि at least 2 out of 4 in every passage were reasonably direct questions. And here we did not get too many those agree disagree of author kind of questions, which perhaps sometimes students find it more difficult. I think out of 16, somebody who's done all 16 should have got 9 to 10 correct. इसमें. And time बहुत था. In English, there was no paucity of time at all. It was reasonably well-paced paper. You could have easily completed the whole paper here. If
I
your
think
strong point is English.
I think
Even
the
if you're not so
time
good in
aspect
English,
is.
3 passages.
I think the time aspect, Nikunj, comes into play when we look at the number of words that we have estimated of the passages, right? Typically, till last year, we used to see every passage was, on an average 500 to 550 words. वाला रहता था, 450 to
Correct.
500 वाले range में रहता था. This time, I think the passages were also probably not so lengthy, leaving us time to read and comprehend as well.
And the comprehension was easy. As Siddharth rightly said, reading was simpler than last year. So this time we did not feel the kind of the need to run faster. It was coming smooth. So even in the VA, I somehow felt that there was no such pressure of time. The 8 VA questions could have been easily attempted in 10 minutes, 10 to 11
Yeah.
minutes.
That means this paper was basically a nightmare for those people who pre-decided and went to the paper कि मैं तो 4 में से 3 ही भी RC करूंगा.
Right. That's what.
I would say
Definitely.
so. Yes.
They would have missed on the
Yes.
things.
All right. Coming to
ये
the verbal
section में
ability
पूरा
part.
24 करने का था.
Coming to the
Exactly.
verbal ability part, a while ago when we were having a discussion, people told me that in each of the all 4 types of questions, 2 each of each type, all 4 types of questions, there was at least one which everyone could have done. The second one, getting the second question right may have been a challenge. Right? So
I think
coming
so, yes.
to
That's the case, yeah.
coming to
So, para summary, yeah. Para summary, I think both the questions were easy. Options, you could have eliminated them easily. So, okay, we are saying one easy, one moderate. Odd sentences are always trickier. So one moderate, one difficult is fair enough with odd sentences. You can never be sure about it. Para completion, we were stuck between 2 options. I think that's what we discussed in both the para completion question. Para jumbles were similar to what we say we had last year.
in fact, Siddharth, when I was
3 to
attending
4 correct is manageable. 3 to 4 correct हो जाएगा यहाँ पे. So अगर हम लोग 3-4 यहाँ बोलते हैं और करीब 9 से 10 आरसी में बोल रहे हैं, तो we are talking of easily manageable 13 to 14 questions. Correct. Net correct will come down to perhaps 12, 13 around.
So, just seconding your opinion in terms of odd sentence parajumble, I remember in the first lot, there was one parajumble जिसमें 5 sentence में same 2 words present थे, तो मेरे को नहीं पता चला कैसे उसको eliminate करें. Any of the 5 could have been.
There could be one mistake also that a student might have committed, because one student said to me, sir, this time there were parajumbles of 2 types, one of 4 sentences, one of 5 sentences. If you do not read the instruction properly, that could be a problem. So I told him it was not parajumbled.
After the first lot of people told me also that, okay, I did not realize that there is an odd sentence in the paper.
Yeah.
I thought there are 4 direct.
Last year odd one out नहीं आया ना, so I think that could have also resulted in that error.
But we have done this in
Right.
CDC 13, Siddharth. In CDC 13,
Yeah, I know.
we have done 8 questions
exactly.
of VA, 2 each. All 4 types were there in one of the papers. Right. So overall, our estimate was 13 to 14 questions. In attempting about 16 questions was not difficult in this. Getting about 13 to 14 questions correct in this was not difficult, and getting about 12 to 13 questions net correct in this paper was not difficult, which is probably why this paper of VARC was at least 1 question easier than what it was last year, given the length of passages, given the type of questions that were there, given the readability of the passages as well. Coming to the DILR section, the 4 sets that were there. Siddharth, Nikunj, I would want to ask you this. Was there any question which was very straightforward कि हाँ ये तो सबसे बनना चाहिए?
Unfortunately, no. See, यहाँ पे if you read because there was no DI, so there was no immediate pick and choose kind of scenario. इसमें 2 question जो लग रहा था manageable है, वो rights वाला and the funding, I think, which is the number 2 and 3, I believe here. Second and the third case, student would have got into it, but both of them, if you go ahead and solve it, there would be places where there would be hiccups. So there was not a single case which I felt was, just you do it and within 5 to 7 minutes you are through. Usually, अगर आप past year के LRDI देखोगे, एक ना एक केस ऐसा आया था हर बार, which was an absolute definitely do kind of a case. अभी यहाँ postmortem में हम लोग बोल सकते हैं between 2 and 3, 1 was an absolute do kind of a scenario, but पढ़ के ही ऐसा लग नहीं रहा था कि इसको करना ही है. Yes, ये वाला जो था grid, 4th one you can say was an easy one to leave, because too much of data to be fitted in, too many conditions, and difficult one. I mean, this asterisk, where one condition satisfies, at least two conditions satisfy. I mean, that I think was a very clear, easy one to be left out. So वो एक easy था जो कि आप elimination के हिसाब से was simple. But apart from that, between 1, 2 and 3, I don't think it was a very easy pick and choose. 1, though, I would again say that पढ़ के थोड़ा complicated लग रहा था, because it was very heavy in terms of reading. 2 and 3 was the easiest to begin with, and that I believe also were the scoring ones. So इसलिए वैसा इसमें कोई ट्रैप नहीं था कि आपको लग रहा था इजी, आप उसमें घुसे और आपसे नहीं हुआ. I don't think that was the scenario. But the difficult part was that none of the cases were absolute kind of easily doable ones. So between 2 and 3, I would pick, I mean, any one, definitely one full of them and one half. So I would go with those 7, 8 kind of a correct scenario in this particular section.
All right. Siddharth, did you find that normally in many of our mocks, even if you look at CAT 2022 also, there is typically one set which can be done, all 5 क्वेश्चन उसमें बन जाते हैं, and there are couple of sets इधर उधर पड़े हैं जिसमें से 2 क्वेश्चन निकाल के आप आगे बढ़ जाते हो. That kind of a set, out of 2 and 3, definitely one out of these 2 sets have to be solved by the students, is what we are saying, had to be solved. Even in the first and fourth, which we are saying data heavy and easy to leave, in these sets, were there any questions जो question बना के आगे निकल जाए without solving the entire set?
I really doubt. ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं था. मतलब I think rights and timings वाला, if somebody solve, the person will get all 5 right. Should get all 5 right. There were not multiple cases. Solving that might have taken a bit of time. Unfortunately, otherwise, if you see, there were no questions wherein we can say ki in this set at least you could have solved this particular question. I remember in the first set, the first question was about who has scored the highest, right? So there were 3 people, and 3 options were given, and then one cannot be determined was given. Then when you go to question number 4 or 5 of that particular set, it was, if this person has scored this many marks, then what will be score of the other person? So maybe slightly, if you apply your logic, you could have done that, you said, but on the spot at that particular time, it's very difficult to interpret it that way.
So overall,
question
questions
set
were
4
not
में रवि, set 4 में first question was absolute sitter. अगर आप उसको पढ़ेंगे, because third row में जो medians दिए हुए थे and the number of more than 5 pointers which were given, if somebody read the case, it was very evident from the options which one would be the right answer. तो उस लॉजिक से अगर जाएंगे तो लास्ट केस में 1 या 2 क्वेश्चन बनने वाले थे. बट केस 2 में फॉर एग्जांपल
प्रॉब्लम मीडियन वर्ड की थी सर, मेरे ख्याल से लास्ट में मीडियन वर्ड के साथ प्रॉब्लम थी. तो many people would have left it there.
सेम वैल्यूज में भी मीडियंस आ रही थी. So that was the main problem. The values were not distinct. So that created a lot of confusion in set 4.
I think so. That's where, in this paper, questions were not helpful, guys. What we are trying to tell you is
not much.
Figuring out, to be able to solve questions. This was a paper, unlike what happened in slot 1 in our paper. In slot 2, the difference that I can gauge from it is that there were not sets in which you could solve 2 or 3 questions and leave uske baad. If you solve a set, you get all 5. So this was a paper in which aapke set bante hain. Slot 1 was a paper jisme aapke questions bante hain. Right? That is the only striking difference, remarkable difference I can see in both the slots. Just like in slot 2, slot 1 also had, there were 2 sets which were doable, जिसमें से एक तो पक्का कर लेना चाहिए था. Out of the remaining 2 sets also, which is set 1 and set 4 as per this paper, out of the remaining 2 sets also, in slot 1, there were 1 or 2 questions that you could have picked and solved, while that option was not available here. So slot 2 DILR, we are estimating it to be at least a question tougher than the CAT slot 23 slot 1 DILR, while it is definitely probably 2 questions tougher than what it was, 1 to 2 questions tougher than what it was in CAT 2022. Coming to the elephant in the room, quantitative ability. Nikunj, I'll tell you what I felt when I was taking slot one. Okay, I felt like it was a personal attack. वो मेरे को अटैक कर रहा था कि ये रवि से नहीं बनना चाहिए सवाल, ऐसे क्वेश्चन दिए थे उसने. Did you feel there were questions like this which someone who is not in touch will not be able to solve at all?
हाँ, मतलब यूजुअली आउट ऑफ 22 क्वेश्चंस जिसका मैथ्स बहुत एवरेज है, बिलो एवरेज भी है, ही इज एबल टू स्कोर 4-5 जस्ट बेसिकली ऑन द मूव. तो जो हम लोग वो R1, R2, R3 की बात करते हैं नो, इसमें R1 में मिलेगा ही नहीं कुछ खास. So here you will struggle to solve more than, let's say, 4-5 questions in your first move out of 22, जो कि normally हम लोग 8-10 का बात करते थे usually. So yes, as you rightly said, here every question was painful to solve, and every arithmetic question, which students का expectation क्या होता है, arithmetic would be easy, I would be able to manage. But there I think that made the paper difficult. More than number of questions of arithmetic, I think the tedious and the lengthy nature of the arithmetic questions made it difficult. Students would have stuck their neck out कि नहीं मुझे arithmetic के 8 सवाल करने हैं, चाहे मुझे 40 मिनट उसी में लग जाए, would have reasonably done well here. तो इसमें you actually needed to have that kind of patience, solve a lesser questions, take more time but get them correct. That kind of an attitude would have been required here, because you couldn't do it. 1-2 मिनट में कोई भी सवाल होने वाला नहीं था यहाँ पे. You just read it and solve it in a minute or two. That kind of questions were missing in this whole set completely. And as I said, it's a very slightly biased towards, I would suggest that थोड़ा सा engineer biased होगा इसमें. So perhaps the cutoffs on the higher levels perhaps would go down as much as the paper level seems so, but on the mid level, like 90 and below 90, definitely the cutoffs would suffer here, would go down.
So not enough sitters in the paper. Even arithmetic, you had to work hard.
You had to work hard, and a lot of calculations involved, and questions were tricky. Like even if you look at the pipes and cistern question, there were 2-3 equations coming up. I mean, usually you associate that's an easy chapter. You would be able to do it simply. Profit and loss question भी उसमें 3-4 transactions happening, average उसमें घुसा दिया उन्होंने, and maximum minimum भी उसमें था एक, how many minimum number of shirts, maximum number of shirts. So even that question was quite complicated.
I think, IIM Lucknow has failed to live to its reputation. Last time they conducted a paper, 2017, is supposedly the easiest paper of quant in the recent times. Now they have turned the tide.
Surprisingly, PNC was completely missing. I mean, I have been taking CAT over the years. 1-2 question PNC का हर साल आता है. I mean, this time it was completely, Venn diagrams was zero in this whole paper. There was not a single Venn diagram in LRDI or QA.
Right. Siddharth, what was your take on algebra in this paper?
See, it was difficult. Only those who have conceptual clarity, they could have solved it. There were not. I don't think there was any question wherein we could have substituted और कुछ जुगाड़ लगा के कर लेते. ऐसा कुछ था नहीं algebra में. आपको पता होना चाहिए कि कैसे बनेगा. Only then you could have solved. I think in arithmetic maybe you can say 2 questions were doable, 2 or 3 questions. But apart from that, there was nothing much in the paper which I can say was easy.
So geometry में फिर भी जुगाड़, the 2 questions in geometry were very जुगाड़ oriented. वो आप value लगा के आराम से कर सकते थे.
Value लगा के कर लेते, खासकर circle and triangle वाला.
To solve in a typical CAT paper.
So last year the 80th percentile, the sectional cutoff in quant for most colleges went at in the scaled scores, it was about 12 marks. It was about 4 questions in each of the slots. Typically people who got about 4 questions net correct got that 80 percentile. Do you think that in this paper there were 4 to 5 to 6 questions that 80% of people would have solved. वो थे
No,
पेपर में 5-6
I
सिटर्स भी
would
नहीं
not.
थे.
no,
Not more than three.
no, no, not more than 3.
Not more than
That is
3.
why 80, 85, 90 कट ऑफ आपका गिरेगा.
गिरेगा. Okay.
99 कट ऑफ मुझे लग रहा है हो सकता है नहीं गिरे बिकॉज ऑफ द इंजीनियरिंग सेगमेंट.
Right. I think
वो भी मेरे ख्याल से पर्सनली आई फील वो गिरेगा बिकॉज एक होता है कि एक्सपेक्टेशन क्या रहता है एंड आ क्या रहा है, तो दैट साइकोलॉजी वो ड्यूरिंग दैट 40 मिनट दैट आल्सो प्लेज अ रोल.
so. Overall, this is what you would say about this paper. VARC, the ideal score or attempt. Ideal score is basically a score corresponding to 99 percentile, guys. What we are saying is 13 to 14 questions net correct in VARC. That about 40 marks in VARC would get you 99th percentile in this paper. In DILR, the 8 to 9 questions is what we are saying. 8 to 9 questions, that is about 25 to 26 marks in DILR, should lead you to about 99th percentile, and quantitative ability about 25 to 28. That range, because of engineers, the range, people who are prepared for IIT JEE, the range may fluctuate a little, but somewhere around 8 to 9 questions again in DILR also is in quant also is where we are expecting about is where we are expecting the 99th percentile to be. Any changes here, Nikunj? Any changes here, Siddharth?
I would actually go with one lesser question in LRDI and one more in quant. That would be my take.
Okay, so this could be
Yeah.
So
this
overall remains
25
where
to
it is.
26 can translate to about
I think
28, 29, and this 25 to 28 can acha, one lesser in
Yeah,
DILR,
yeah,
22 to 25 types,
correct. And this can actually move to 27 to 29 something.
27 to 29. All right.
So
So overall, I
overall
think
80 seems to be good at 99.
80 marks for 99
It could actually
percentile.
come to 78 also, I won't be surprised. But the
I
only
think
thing is
75
English
to,
would boost the scores.
yeah.
So last year, if I remember correctly, last year people suffered as compared to CAT 21, people suffered a hit back in terms of both quant and VARC. But I think this year the scores in VARC will be uplifted, but quant will typically go down. As a result, the net result will remain more or less the same, given that DILR has more or less been able to be consistent over the years in terms of troubling people.
So last year 99, 84 पे था ना?
Yeah, about 84, 83, 84 scaled score के आसपास था. 99.
So more or less 4 एक point अपने एक question. So 3 to 4 marks. So something in the range of 79, 80 we can go with.
So basically, especially I think what will happen in quant is 90th to 99th percentile, the gap will be very less. Above 99, I think, is where one question, 3 marks, 5 marks का difference भी आ सकता है in the higher 99th percentiles. But judging from what I have heard from you and judging from what I have experienced in the first slot also, what I feel is quant mein there will be a cluster of people between the 90th and 99th percentile in a very close range of scores. So that takes us to our uh, last slide. So this is what we are expecting, guys, in terms of the 80th percentile section wise in slot 2. This is what we are expecting. The sectional cutoffs for your VARC, DILR, and quant for most of the IIMs will be in the range of about 7 to 8 questions, 6 to 7 questions in VARC, 4 to 5 questions in DILR, and 4 to 5 questions, 3 to 4 questions in quantitative ability. While the 99th percentile, we are expecting it to be about in the range of 13 to 14 questions in VARC, 25 to 26 marks in DILR, and about 28 to 30 marks at best in quantitative ability. So this is what the impression is of slot 2, and this is what slot 2 was in as compared to the previous year's CAT 2022 and CAT 2021. We can definitely see there is a spike in scores of the VRC. We are expecting a small spike, though very small spike. DILR more or less similar. Quant, there is definitely a decline. So if if your paper was not as good, अगर आपका पेपर बहुत अच्छा नहीं हुआ है और अगर आपको बुरा लग रहा है तो बुरा मत मानो, पेपर खराब था, राइट? वो सबके लिए खराब था, राइट? क्वांटिटेटिव एबिलिटी में we felt suffocated. As if there was not enough freedom to play with those numbers, not enough freedom to apply jugaad in questions. There were questions like that in quantitative ability. DILR choosing the sets right from the outset, judging the sets right from the outset in a minute or two was not very easy unless you get your hands dirty and form the table and see ki boss nahi ban raha hai. So this was a difficult paper. More or less, if you have done one complete set in DILR and 2-3 more questions, if you have attempted about 8 to 10 questions in quant and you have been able to go through the entire section of VARC, I think you should be very happy with your attempt and you will be there, is what we feel.
Absolutely.
Another thing to add is that students can now use the score calculator. Percentile predictor might be out in few days time once the we get the response sheet. And so if I'm not wrong, Ravi, but the score calculator is live for the students, so they can just check the score calculator.
Yeah, greater the number of people who check the score calculator, better will be our analysis of the better will be our comprehensive analysis at 9:30, where we will compare slot 1 versus slot 2 versus slot 3. There are a lot of people who have submitted their expected scores for slot 1, basis which, you know, the number in which they have submitted, the number of attempts they have done in each of the questions, that simple numbers that you have to fill in there, basis which we will be able to judge अच्छा slot 1 as compared to slot 2 as compared to slot 3 कौन सा बढ़ेगा कौन सा section घटेगा and all. We'll be giving you a comprehensive analysis at 9:30 p.m. Please stay tuned with us. Before that, right after the slot 3 exam is over at 6:30, at 7 p.m. we will be coming live with the first impressions of slot 3. 8 p.m. we will be doing a detailed analysis of slot 3 just like this, and at 9:30 p.m. in the mega session we will bring you mentors all from all over the country who have attempted CAT in all the 3 different slots, and we will give you a comprehensive comparative analysis of all the 3 slots. All the best.
चलो ठीक है, बाय.
Thank you, Siddharth. Thank you, Nikunj.
अरे क्या.
Yeah.